Hi, it's Will from StormTheCastle.com, and here on YouTube you know me as Epic Fantasy, and this is my latest tutorial. This is part 2 of the how to make a Damascus knife tutorial. And in this, you can see that the handle is a clear resin, and that way we can still see the Damascus steel pattern through the handle, which is kind of neat and unique. I kind of like this idea. It came to me when I was making the wooden handles, and I thought, gee, you know, it's a shame to cover all this nice steel with wood. And this video is a lot. We do some forge work, we do some woodworking, we do some mold making, we do some flat resin casting, and we acid etch our knife. Dioramas, origami, catapults, and trebuchets, telescopes, terrariums, bonsai trees, and paper games, swords and shields, and real blacksmithing, model rockets, animation. I teach the art of real creation. StormTheCastle.com. Let's make something. Alright, so let's get started. When we left the knife, it was like this. Now we need to put a bevel on it. And I'm going to do that all by hand with files. So this video is a pretty long video. I'm not going to cover everything in depth. I'm just going to give you overviews of things. If you want to learn more about all of this stuff and how to do it better and the specifics of things, go to my tutorial on the website. So there we go. I'm starting the bevel, and it's looking pretty good just with filing. A mill file. And I also made a file guide, a file jig, to help me keep it all nice and straight. And it came out okay. The bevel could have been better, but it looks pretty good there. But you can see the Damascus pattern as you're filing, but it isn't very strong, and our acid etching later will bring that out. So we do both sides, bring it close to the center line of the steel, but not all the way, because if we brought it to a point, an edge, we'd have a hard time hardening and tempering it in the forge later. So you flip it over and you do the other side before one side is done. I like to kind of work both sides and bring them down further and further. So once we've got the filing of the bevel done, we're going to make the guard. And first I made a little template there so I could try to see what it was going to look like and the size and shape of it. And then I transferred that pattern over to a piece of brass bar stock. And brass is really popular with knife makers because it just has that wonderful look to it. So to get the slot in the brass, first I cut a hole and then hacksawed it out. See, and then cleaned it all up and straightened it and get it to the right size with the file. So there we go, we have our rough piece of brass guard, and later I will file that and work it some more to get it to the shape we want after the handle has been placed. So let's work on the handle. I started with a piece of wood, cut it down in size to the shape of our knife, and then I drilled out our steel knife blank, well, our steel knife, and then transferred that whole pattern to our block of wood before splitting it in half for the two sides of the handle. This way the holes were all lined up nice and neat. Exactly right. So now we could assemble it. So that whole pattern is now perfect with the blade, so there's no issues. And then I'm temporarily going to pin it with wood, with 1/4 inch wooden dowels, because those are 1/4 inch holes. And then I use a rasp to shape it. And this is the fun part. I love this part. They're just kind of like sculpting with wood and a rasp. And it goes pretty quick. This is not difficult work. But keep working at it until you get the contours, the shape, and the size that you want. Pretty close to what you want. And we don't end up using this for the knife, which I've done many times before if you watch my videos. We're going to actually use these handle halves to cast and make a clear resin handle. But it looks good. I like it. Kind of nice. Imagine the brass guard on there too. That makes a difference. So we're using something here called Amazing Mold Putty. Just because it's quick and easy. I spent this, and what it is it comes in 2 parts that you mix together. And then you've got a working life of a few minutes with it to actually make your mold. And this is really easy mold making. If you want to try making a mold, get some of this mold putty. And then you just press it over your item to be copied. and in my case, the two halves of the knife handle. And once it sets, you remove your model from the mold, and you can see there's a little bit of a stickiness down there. I think I demolded it a little too fast, and that makes a difference, and it shows up in our handles. But from there, now we have our molds. Now I'm using an acrylic. It's called Marvelosa. It is a clear casting resin. They actually use this stuff to cast fake martini glasses and stuff. It's pretty good. But you mix two halves and then just pour it in the mold, and it takes forever to set. Like 24 to 48 hours to fully set. So, what am I going to do? Well, that's easy enough. Once we've poured it and happy with it, let's head out to the forge. Okay, so now our knife is shaped and all done, and now we want to harden and temper it so it can be used as a knife. And Damascus steel, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to hardening and tempering steel, but the gist of it is you're going to heat it up to around red orange hot until a magnet no longer sticks to it. Keep it in there a little bit longer, and then very quickly quench it. And there's a lot of discussion as to what you quench in, but you want to bring the temperature down by about 500 degrees in less than a second. So you've got to get it up to non-magnetized, keep it a little longer, and then quench it. And with Damascus steel, because it's layers of two different things, it can crack on you. But that's what I did, and I got a reasonable hardness out of it. And right now it's hard; it could even shatter if you dropped it. So now we temper it, which means we heat it up until it's golden wheat color, which is around 500 degrees, and then quench it. So what we've done is we hardened it and then softened it up some so it can be functional as a knife. And there's a lot to this hardening and tempering, but we go by, with the Damascus steel, we go by the steel, not the nickel, and the temperatures it needs to do its hardening and tempering. And I have more about that on the website. It's actually pretty fascinating stuff. So let's clean it up. And you can see it looks okay. You can see the Damascus pattern. You can barely not see it in the bevel of the blade. And that's pretty normal. We've cleaned it up, and we're going to clean it up with acetone really good to get everything off of it, anything at all. We want it really, really clean, and then we're going to etch it. And now etching it with acid will bring out the steel. It's going to make a significant difference in how it looks. So did you notice how the steel looked there? Just kind of looked very vaguely patterned. But what happens here is I'm spending 15 minutes in an acid bath, and then that pattern just pops. And you'll see it real quick, and you'll notice it in the rest of the video, how all of a sudden that pattern is just wonderful. Look at that, it's like a zebra. So yeah, see the significant difference. That's what acid etching does. So out of the acid bath and into a neutralizing bath to neutralize the acid. But there's a lot of things you can do, and I got more about this on my website. You know, the different types of stuff you can do, how long, and it's a whole science. And I'll give you some general guidelines there. You etch in acid, and then you neutralize it, and then you're ready to move on. And the reason why this works is that nickel and steel are eaten differently by the acid. And so that brings out the contrast between the two, is in effect what it does. So it's been like 30 hours later, and let's demold our Marvelosa clear casting resin. And you can see my mold was, could have been better. But that's okay, we're going to go with it. But there's our handle. So now, instead of having a wooden handle, we're going to be able to somewhat see through the handle to see more of the Damascus steel underneath the handle, which is what I like, and it's kind of unique. I don't know if anyone's ever done this before. I just thought it was such a waste to cover up all that beautiful Damascus with wood. Not that wood isn't beautiful. So we get those handle halves, we're going to clean them up, drill them out, just as we did with the wood. And then assemble it to the knife. I'm using a 5-minute clear epoxy. We want a nice clear epoxy so we can still see through it. This is Gorilla Glue. They make 1,000 different kinds. Oh, and notice here, I also pinned with steel pins the guard on the knife. See those 2 pins on the brass? I also pinned it too for strength. I didn't show any of that in the video, but that's drilled all the way through and pinned all the way through. So you spread your glue on both sides of your knife handle, and then attach the handles and pin them with brass pins, 1/4" brass pins, which is what I use, but you could use whatever you want. I like the brass with the Damascus, and I like the brass with the clear handles. So I guess that's an aesthetic. So we did a lot in this video. Like I said early on, I mean, we acid etched, we did some woodworking, we did some mold making, we did some resin casting. That's one of the beautiful things about knife making is you can cover a lot of different little skill sets when you're doing it. It's a wonderful hobby. So we've got it all set in place, and we clamp it down, but don't clamp it on the pins or else it won't clamp. And set it aside, and then we will finish it off. Now I set it aside for 24 hours, so it's fully cured, and then got back to working on it to finish off this knife. And finishing it off means getting the guard to seat well, to look well with the handle, bringing down those pins, shaping the handle a little bit more. See how tall those pins are? I sanded those down. Use whatever tools you can, and the file works fine on brass. It really does quick with brass. See? And I was really trying to be cautious about not scratching our clear resin handle, but I scratched it a lot, so, which I guess it doesn't matter. But and then I mixed up a small batch of our Marvelosa casting resin, and then watch this. When you paint that on, it just cleans it up pretty good. So that's a good thing. If you have some ideas as to what could be used for a clearer handle, this one's okay, but I would love like glass, a handle that would be just clear as glass, not stained glass, but clear as glass. You could see the pattern through it really well. With this stuff, you got to get the light a little bit to get through there to see it, but there you go. You can see the Damascus pattern through it. But an interesting project, a little bit creative, I think, you know. And hey, there's another project I've been working on in the background. See that little doorway, that little building? I got more stuff coming. But there you go. That's part 2 of making a Damascus steel knife without actually making the Damascus. Thanks for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're a subscriber, thanks for subscribing to my channel. If you're not a subscriber, hit that button. I always have lots of fun and interesting and very creative projects. I do 2 new ones every week. As an example, here's a couple more videos you might want to watch.